The week my wife got promoted was supposed to be one of the best weeks of our marriage. Instead, it was the week she started treating our bedroom like it had been condemned. Her name is Rachel. We'd been married 9 years, together for almost 13, and up until then I never thought of us as one of those couples who slowly turned into roommates without noticing. We had routines, sure. Work, dinner, laundry, bills, the same grocery list every Sunday, the same argument every winter about whether the thermostat was set too low. But underneath all of that, there was still something warm between us. Still that quiet pull. A hand on my shoulder in the kitchen. Her feet under my leg on the couch. A kiss before bed that didn't feel automatic. Then she got promoted. Rachel worked in corporate finance for a medical supply company. Long hours, sharp people, constant pressure, the kind of job where everyone always sounded like they were half a sentence away from a nervous breakdown but somehow still had time to CC 6 extra people on every email. She'd been working toward that promotion for over a year. Late nights. Weekend laptop sessions. Calls during dinner. There were months where I felt like her real marriage was to spreadsheets and mine was just whatever time was left over. Still, I was proud of her. Genuinely proud. The night she found out, I brought home a bottle of wine she liked, ordered takeout from the expensive Italian place she always said wasn't worth the money, and even picked up one of those little lemon cakes from the bakery near my office because she loved them and never bought them for herself. I thought we were going to celebrate. I thought this was one of those milestone nights people remember. She came home smiling, but not at me exactly. More like smiling into a future that had already started without me. She hugged me at the door, quick and distracted, like she was passing through. Then she went straight into talking about new responsibilities, the new title, the bigger client visibility, how her boss said she had executive presence, which I guess is corporate language for looking calm while your soul leaves your body in meetings. I listened. I really did. I asked questions. Told her I was proud of her. Raised a glass. She seemed happy, just elevated. Like her feet had lifted an inch off the ground and the rest of us were supposed to admire the view. That night, after dinner, after the wine, after all the congratulations and toasts and me telling her she had earned every bit of it, I followed her upstairs thinking maybe the whole day would finally settle into something that felt like us. Instead, she changed into an oversized t-shirt, tied her hair up, climbed into bed with her laptop, and said she wanted to get ahead on a few things before Monday because the expectations were different now. I laughed a little and told her those expectations could wait one night. She didn't laugh back. She just said she was serious. Not angry. Not cruel. Just flat. Focused. Like I had interrupted a meeting she hadn't told me she was still in. I let it go. That's what I told myself anyway. In reality, I swallowed it. That's something I got good at over the years. Swallowing small disappointments before they had time to become real. You do that enough in a marriage and you start calling it patience. Over the next 2 weeks, everything shifted just slightly. Not enough to point at. Enough to feel. Rachel started coming home later, which made sense on paper. More responsibility. More meetings. More visibility, like she kept saying. She also started dressing differently. Nothing wild. Just sharper. More deliberate. New blouses. Better heels. Jewelry she used to save for events suddenly became weekday normal. Even her makeup changed. More polished. More effort. Like every day had become a performance and she had finally been handed the right stage. I noticed all of it because I'm her husband. That's supposed to be normal. What wasn't normal was what started happening at night. The first few times she turned me down, I didn't think much of it. She said she was exhausted. Said her brain wouldn't shut off. Said she felt gross from sitting in an office all day and just wanted a shower and sleep. Fine. Life happens. Nobody gets married expecting the same rhythm forever. I'm not an idiot. But then it kept happening. If I touched her waist in the bathroom while she was brushing her teeth, she would shift just enough to break contact. If I put a hand on her leg while we watched TV, she'd casually pull a blanket over herself like she was cold. At night, she started rolling onto her side earlier than usual, phone in hand, body angled away from me before the lamp was even off. One night I kissed the back of her neck and she actually sighed. Not the good kind. The tired kind. Then she said she could not do this when her mind was still full of work. I pulled back right away and said okay. But the thing that sat with me afterward wasn't the rejection itself. It was how familiar it sounded, even though I'd never heard those exact words from her before. Like she had already been saying them in her head for a while. By the third week, our bedroom didn't feel like a room we shared. It felt like a place where I was expected to understand boundaries that no one had explained to me. There are small humiliations in marriage no one warns you about. Not betrayal-level humiliations. The quieter kind. Standing in your own bathroom wondering why your wife has started changing with her back turned. Lying beside someone you love and feeling them go still when you move an inch closer. Catching yourself timing your own affection so you don't seem needy. That last part got to me more than I want to admit. I started managing myself around her. Editing normal instincts before they could become unwelcome. I stopped reaching for her as automatically. Stopped kissing her neck while she cooked. Stopped trying to start anything in bed because there are only so many times a man can pretend he is fine being treated like an inconvenience. The weird thing was, Rachel didn't seem angry with me. That would have been easier. She seemed preoccupied. Restless. Slightly impatient all the time, like the life inside her had become too loud for our house. She would answer work emails after dinner with this focused little intensity I hadn't seen before. Sometimes she'd smile faintly at her screen, then lock it the second I walked by. Once or twice, I asked what was so funny, and she said something vague about group chats or office nonsense. Again, nothing concrete. Just enough to leave a mark. I work as a project manager for a regional construction firm, which means my days are full of delays, budgets, permit issues, and grown adults calling me because nobody read the plan set correctly. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. Predictable. The kind of work that leaves your brain tired but not transformed. I say that because I kept wondering if maybe this whole thing was on me. Maybe I was too static now. Too ordinary. Maybe her world had sped up and I was standing still in it. That thought got under my skin fast. It's amazing how quickly distance can turn into self-doubt when the person creating it refuses to name it. About a month after the promotion, her company hosted a Friday evening mixer at a rooftop bar downtown. Spouses were invited. Rachel almost forgot to mention it until 2 days before, which stung more than I let show. But I went. Put on a jacket. Took the train in from the suburbs. Told myself maybe seeing her in her world would help me understand what was going on. When I got there, Rachel was already in work mode. That was the only way to describe it. She introduced me around, but her attention kept moving. She was brighter than she had been at home in weeks. More animated. More alive. She laughed easily. Touched people when she talked. Held eye contact. She had that charged-up energy I remembered from earlier years of our marriage, when she used to come home excited about things and pull me into that excitement with her. Only now I was standing 3 feet away from it like a guest. Then I met Greg. Her boss. Mid-40s maybe. Crisp suit. Too relaxed in the way men get when they know room's open for them. He shook my hand, looked at Rachel while he talked about her instead of talking to her, and told me I should be proud because she was going to be very valuable at the next level. Rachel smiled in a way I hadn't seen in a while. Not a wife smile. Not the soft kind she used to save for private moments. This one was sharper. Flattered. Alert. Later that night, I saw him lean in to say something to her near the bar. She laughed, touched his arm lightly, and for 1 second forgot I was there. Just 1 second. Maybe that would have meant nothing to someone else. Maybe it still should have meant nothing to me. But when your wife has turned cold at home and suddenly looks warm under another man's attention, your mind doesn't file it away as harmless. It stores it. On the train ride home, Rachel talked the whole time about future opportunities, leadership visibility, who was moving up, who was getting pushed out, how everything felt different now. I nodded and listened while the city lights slid past the window. When we got home, she went straight upstairs, took off her earrings, set down her purse, and started removing makeup in the bathroom mirror. I came up behind her and put my hand lightly on her hip. Not even trying to start anything. Just wanting to feel close to my own wife after spending 2 hours watching the version of her that everyone else seemed to get. She looked at my hand in the mirror. Then she moved it away and said, very calmly, that she was too tired for this tonight. I said I wasn't trying to pressure her. She said she knew, but lately she needed our bedroom to feel like a place where she could shut down, not another place where something was expected from her. That hit harder than I let show. Our bedroom. Not our marriage. Not us. A place. A place she was already redefining without me. I slept badly that night. Not because of one comment. Because deep down I knew it wasn't just one comment anymore. Something had changed in Rachel after that promotion, and whatever it was, it had followed us into bed and locked the door from the inside. Then the next morning, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up on the nightstand. And when I glanced over, I saw Greg's name on the screen. I stared at Greg's name until the screen went dark. Just long enough to feel that sick drop in my stomach. Not long enough to learn anything useful. I told myself there were normal reasons for a boss to text on a Saturday morning. Rachel had just been promoted. Her whole life seemed to run through that office now. Maybe it was some client issue, some spreadsheet emergency, some problem only corporate people know how to make sound urgent on a weekend. But the truth is, if it had only been the message, I might have let it go. What made it stay with me was everything around it. The rooftop bar. The way she laughed at him. The way she moved my hand off her hip like I was asking for too much in my own house. The way our bedroom had suddenly become, in her words, a place to shut down. That phrase kept echoing in my head all morning while I pretended to read the news at the kitchen table and Rachel moved around the house like nothing had changed. She came downstairs in leggings and one of my old college sweatshirts, poured herself coffee, and checked her phone before she even sat down. Her face shifted for half a second when she unlocked it. Not surprise exactly. More like focus. Then she typed something quickly with both thumbs and set the phone face down beside her mug. I asked if work was bothering her already. She looked up too fast, then gave me a small smile and said it never really stopped anymore. I nodded like that explained everything. Maybe it did. Maybe that should have been enough. But once a bad thought gets in, it doesn't leave just because you act reasonable around it. It grows in private. The next week, Rachel got even busier. That, by itself, made sense. Promotions don't come with less work. But something about the way she was busy started feeling off. She was still physically in the house, still sitting across from me at dinner, still sleeping 6 inches away from me every night, and yet it felt like all the meaningful parts of her were happening somewhere else. Monday, she came home after 8 and said Greg had pulled her into an end-of-day strategy meeting that ran long. Tuesday, she barely touched the dinner I made because she said she had grabbed something with the team. Wednesday, she was in our bedroom on a conference call until almost 10, speaking in that calm, professional voice she now seemed to access more easily than her real one. By Thursday, I realized I had started listening for signs of her mood when she came in the door. Not just whether she was tired. Whether she was cold with me specifically. If she walked in distracted and drained, I told myself it was work. If she walked in lit up and still kept me at a distance, that was worse. Because then I knew the problem wasn't energy. It was where that energy went. That Thursday night, I tested something without planning to. Rachel had just gotten home, kicked off her heels by the entryway, and was standing in the kitchen scrolling through emails while I finished cleaning up after dinner. She looked good in that sharpened, polished way she always did lately. Hair still in place. Makeup not quite worn off. Gold hoops catching the light. She was tired, sure, but not empty. I walked up beside her and kissed her temple. A simple kiss. Husband-level affection. Nothing loaded. She stiffened immediately. Not dramatically. Just enough for me to feel it. Then she stepped sideways, set her phone down, and said she needed a shower before she could think straight. Before she could think straight. Like my affection had entered the room as one more demand. I stood there with a dish towel in my hand and felt stupid for the rest of the night. That's the part people don't talk about enough. How betrayal, before you can prove it, makes you feel ridiculous. Petty. Weak. Like you're collecting tiny humiliations in secret and calling it intuition because you're too ashamed to say what you're really afraid of. Friday evening, Matt from work asked if I wanted to grab a drink after hours. Normally I would have gone. Instead I said no because Rachel and I hadn't had a real night together in weeks and I kept hoping one good evening might reset something. I picked up Thai food from her favorite place, got home before she did, and even cleared off the dining table so it didn't look like our usual rushed weekday dinner. She texted at 6:42 saying not to wait up. Greg had added another meeting and then the team was probably going downstairs for drinks. I read that message 3 times. Not because the team was suspicious on its own. Because a month earlier, Rachel would have at least sounded sorry. She would have sent some version of I know, I hate this, rain check tomorrow. Now it was just information. Efficient. Barely personal. I ended up eating alone at the kitchen island while her food sat in takeout containers going cold. She got home after 10:30, smelling faintly like perfume and bar air. Not her usual perfume. Just the mix of other people, alcohol, elevator air, city night. She looked energized in a way that made no sense for someone who had spent all week telling me how overwhelmed she was. She was talking faster, moving faster, kicking off her shoes and telling me some story about a guy in legal getting too drunk and trying to explain market forecasting to everyone like he'd invented numbers. I tried to smile in the right places. I really did. Then I asked how the drinks were. She said fun, actually. Actually. That word stayed with me because it sounded like a pleasant surprise to her. Like she had access to a version of herself outside this house that didn't exist in it anymore. I asked who all went. She started naming people while taking out bobby pins in the hallway mirror. 2 women from her team. Someone from operations. Greg. Then 2 more names I didn't know. She said Greg's name in the same tone as the others, but I noticed she didn't look at me when she said it. Again, maybe harmless. But there is a point when your mind stops treating each moment as separate. They start stacking. Saturday afternoon we were supposed to go look at patio furniture for the back deck, something we'd put off since spring. Around noon Rachel came downstairs dressed, but not for furniture shopping. Black slacks, fitted cream blouse, makeup done, hair smooth. Work-adjacent clothes. Sharp clothes. I asked where she was going. She said Greg had asked if she could stop by the office for an hour to go over a presentation before Monday because the executive team wanted revisions. She said it with the same casual irritation people use when describing traffic. Like an inconvenience. Like something she definitely did not want to do. I said on a Saturday? She shrugged and said that was how it worked at this level. Then she added that I would not understand because my industry was different. That landed harder than she probably meant it to. Or maybe exactly as hard as she meant it to. It wasn't just dismissive. It felt like she had started sorting the world into people who mattered to her new life and people who didn't. And suddenly I was standing in the wrong category. She left a few minutes later. I tried to watch a game. Couldn't. Tried doing yard work. Ended up checking the time every 20 minutes like some desperate teenager waiting for a text back. She was gone almost 4 hours. When she got home, she looked slightly flushed and oddly light, the way people do after good news or a secret they're still carrying. I asked if the revisions were done. She said mostly. I asked if anyone else had been there. She said just her and Greg at first, then a couple others joined. At first. I said nothing after that, because I didn't trust my face. That night she fell asleep early with her phone on the nightstand between us, screen angled toward her side. Around 1 in the morning, it buzzed once. Soft, quick, but enough to wake me because I hadn't been sleeping deeply lately anyway. Rachel reached for it immediately. Too immediately. Not the fumbling movement of someone half asleep. More like someone already waiting for it. She unlocked the screen and stared at it long enough for the light to reflect in her eyes. Then she slipped out of bed and took the phone into the bathroom, closing the door almost all the way behind her. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the exhaust fan, and something in me changed. Until then, I had still been trying to protect the marriage from my suspicion. Still trying to be fair. Still telling myself I needed context before I let my mind go somewhere ugly. But men do not sit awake at 1 in the morning while their wives take secret messages into the bathroom and come out pretending everything is normal without learning something important about the temperature of their own home. When Rachel came back to bed, she set the phone face down and slid under the blanket without touching me. I waited a few seconds and asked who it was. She was quiet for just a beat too long. Then she said Greg had sent over notes for Monday. At 1 in the morning. I said that seemed late. She turned onto her side, away from me, and said executives did not care what time it was. Maybe that should have ended there. Maybe I should have turned over and let the darkness keep its secrets one more night. Instead, I stayed awake staring at the outline of her back, and sometime before dawn I realized something I had been fighting for weeks. Rachel had not just gotten busy after her promotion. She had started locking me out. And whatever was waiting on the other side of that locked door was starting to feel personal. After that night, I stopped trying to reassure myself. Not because I had proof. Not yet. But because I was tired of feeling crazy in my own house. There is a point where suspicion stops feeling dramatic and starts feeling practical. You stop asking yourself whether you are overreacting and start asking better questions. What changed? When it changed? Who benefits from the lie? I hit that point sometime around 6 in the morning, lying there beside Rachel while she slept with her back to me and her phone tucked under her pillow like it belonged closer to her than I did. From then on, I paid attention. Real attention. Not the kind where you notice one strange thing and then spend the next 3 days arguing with yourself about whether it meant anything. I started watching patterns. Timing. Mood shifts. The little seams where people think they are being careful but still let the truth breathe for a second. Monday morning, Rachel was up earlier than usual. She came downstairs fully dressed, makeup done, heels already on, coffee in a travel mug instead of the ceramic one she always used when she had an extra 10 minutes. She looked polished in a way that didn't match her claimed exhaustion. Not refreshed exactly. More like switched on. I asked if the revised presentation went well. She said Greg loved what she pulled together and that the executive team would probably review it that afternoon. Pulled together. That phrase sat with me because at 1 in the morning she had made it sound like Greg was just sending notes. Now it sounded like they had built something together. Small difference. But that was how everything came at me now. Small enough to sound petty if I said it out loud. Sharp enough to cut anyway. When she left, I stood at the kitchen window with my coffee and watched her back out of the driveway. Then I did something I'm not proud of. I checked the phone bill. Not because I wanted to become that guy. Because I needed one solid thing that didn't depend on my feelings. We were still on the same account, and I knew the login because I'd set it up years earlier. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the screen longer than I should have before I opened the usage history. I told myself I was looking for confirmation that I'd gone off the rails. That I'd find nothing unusual and hate myself a little, but at least the ground would stop moving under me. Instead, I found Greg's number. Not saved by name, obviously. Just the number itself showing up over and over again in the logs. Calls during office hours. Fine. Calls just after 6. More questionable. Text activity late at night. Worse. One burst of messages past midnight on Saturday, lining up perfectly with the night Rachel took her phone into the bathroom. I sat there staring at the screen until the digits blurred. Even then, a part of me kept trying to rescue her. Maybe it was work. Maybe she was over-involved, overscheduled, pulled into some intense project because that was what promotions did. Maybe this was what ambition looked like from the outside when you were married to it. But if that were true, why hide it? That question became my anchor. If there was nothing wrong, why did everything have to happen behind frosted glass? That week I noticed Rachel had developed a new habit. She smiled at her phone before she looked up from it. It sounds small. It was small. But it happened enough that it became impossible not to see. She would be in the kitchen, on the couch, standing by the sink after dinner, and for a second there would be this private softening in her face, some reaction she belonged to before remembering I was in the room. Then the expression would flatten, and I'd get whatever version of her was left over. Wednesday, she said she had to stay late because Greg wanted her in on a prep session for a Thursday client dinner. That caught my attention because spouses were suddenly welcome at some things and invisible at others, and I had no idea what rules I was living under anymore. I asked what kind of dinner. She said just a work dinner. Nothing important. Nothing important. She took longer getting ready for it than she had for our anniversary the year before. I watched her from the bedroom doorway while she changed earrings twice, redid part of her makeup, and held 2 different blouses up to the mirror before choosing one. Not flashy. Not inappropriate. Just careful. Intentional. Like the evening mattered. I asked if I should wait up. She said no without turning around. That answer came too fast. I nodded and told her to have fun, which felt pathetic the second it left my mouth. After she left, I sat in the den with the TV on and heard almost none of it. Around 9:30, I checked Rachel's social media out of pure desperation for something normal. She hardly posted, but other people from her office did. One of the finance guys had uploaded a group photo from the restaurant bar. 6 people visible. 2 women. 3 men. Rachel. Greg's hand was at the small of her back. Maybe only because they were squeezing into frame. Maybe because that is just what happened in crowded pictures. But the look on Rachel's face was what got me. She wasn't just smiling. She was lit up. Not the polite public smile she used when neighbors made jokes at cookouts. Not the tired one she gave me across our kitchen island. This was the face of a woman fully present in her own life. I zoomed in on that stupid photo until it went grainy. Then I hated myself for doing it. Rachel got home just before 11. She was carrying that same strange brightness from the office drinks the week before. She kicked off her heels, set her purse down, and started telling me about some client moment at dinner, but it felt rehearsed. Like she had picked one safe anecdote to bring home and nothing else. I asked who all stayed late. She listed names. I asked whether Greg was happy with how everything went. She looked at me for 1 second too long before saying yes, very. That pause told me more than the answer. The next morning, I made a decision I had been backing away from. I drove past Rachel's office at lunch. Again, not proud of it. But by then pride had become an expensive luxury. I told myself I was in the area anyway, which was technically true if a 10-minute detour counts as in the area. Her office building sat downtown in one of those glass and steel blocks that all looked temporary and permanent at the same time. I parked across the street where I could see the entrance without being obvious and sat there feeling like a version of myself I would have mocked 6 months earlier. At 12:24, I saw Rachel come out. She wasn't alone. Greg walked beside her, no rush, no visible distance between them. They were talking closely, not like boss and employee making efficient use of a lunch break. More like people already inside a conversation that mattered to both of them. He held the door. She smiled up at him. He touched her elbow lightly to guide her around a puddle near the curb. That elbow touch hit me harder than it should have. Because it was casual. Familiar. Unthinking. You don't guide someone's body unless you're already comfortable entering their space. I watched them walk half a block to a cafe with outdoor tables. They sat across from each other, leaned in, and within minutes the posture changed. Not physical enough to call it an affair if someone demanded proof. But intimate in the quietest way. Heads tilted in. Her face open. His attention fixed. I stayed for maybe 10 minutes before leaving, because I couldn't stand the feeling in my chest. On the drive back to work, the denial started dying. Not all at once. But enough. This was no longer just a marriage under stress. Rachel wasn't merely tired or overwhelmed or adjusting to success. She was giving a version of herself to Greg that she had cut off from me. Time. Energy. Warmth. Anticipation. And she was doing it while making me feel unreasonable for noticing the absence. That night I didn't ask questions. I wanted to see what happened when I stopped helping her manage the lie. Rachel noticed the quiet almost immediately. At dinner she asked if everything was okay. I said work was busy. She nodded like she accepted it, but I could feel her watching me the rest of the evening in small sideways glances. Not worried exactly. More alert. Around 10, she went upstairs with her phone and said she had to review notes before bed. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. She wasn't reviewing notes. She was in our bedroom sitting cross-legged against the headboard, smiling down at her screen. The second she heard me, the smile vanished and the phone turned over against the blanket. I asked what she was reading. She said emails. I said at 10 o'clock? She gave me that tight, controlled look she used now whenever I got too close to something she didn't want touched. Then she said this was what leadership looked like and that I needed to stop acting threatened by her job. That one landed clean. Because suddenly I wasn't a husband reacting to obvious secrecy. I was a smaller man, insecure about his wife succeeding. It was a good angle. Efficient. It let her protect herself and belittle me in one move. I almost apologized. That's the part I keep coming back to. How easy it is to doubt yourself when the person lying to you knows exactly which version of you to attack. I slept maybe 3 hours that night. Friday morning Rachel left early again. Around noon, while I was in a budget review meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It only had one sentence. You deserve to know your wife wasn't at work after dinner last night? No name. No explanation. Nothing else. Just that line. And a minute later, another message came through. A photo. Rachel's car parked outside a hotel downtown. I stared at the photo until my vision went strange around the edges. Rachel's car. Downtown hotel. Timestamp in the corner from the night before. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was. Forgot the meeting I had just walked out of. Forgot the numbers on the conference room screen, the people waiting for me back inside, the whole structure of my normal life. Everything narrowed to that one image and the ugly, quiet truth I had been circling for weeks. She had not just pulled away from me. She had gone somewhere else with what she took. I texted the number back and asked who this was. No response. I called once. Straight to voicemail. That almost made it worse. No explanation. No dramatic build-up. Just proof dropped into my lap by someone who either pitied me or was tired of watching me be the last one to know. I left work early and drove home in a fog I can still remember too clearly. Every red light felt insulting. Every normal thing outside the windshield felt fake. People getting coffee. Walking dogs. Loading groceries. Meanwhile my marriage was collapsing in perfect daylight. Rachel got home around 6:30. She stepped through the front door carrying her laptop bag and one of those clipped, tired expressions she had perfected over the last 2 months. She started to say something about traffic, then stopped when she saw my face. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my phone in front of me. I asked her one question. I asked where she was after dinner last night. She froze. Not for long. Just long enough. Then she said she had gone back to the office because Greg wanted to review a few things before the morning meeting. I slid the phone across the table. She looked at the picture. And everything in her changed. Her shoulders dropped first. Then her mouth. Then whatever last defense she had been holding up behind her eyes just gave out. She sat down slowly like her legs had stopped trusting her. I asked if she wanted to keep lying to me. She didn't answer. I asked if she had slept with him. She covered her face with one hand and started crying. That sound should have softened me. It didn't. Because by then I understood something that made the whole thing feel even uglier. The coldness in our bedroom had never been confusion. It had never been stress alone. It had been transfer. She had been removing herself from our marriage piece by piece while giving that attention, that anticipation, that intimacy somewhere else. After a minute, she nodded. Just once. That was the confession. Not a speech. Not an explanation. Just one small motion that blew up 13 years of my life. I asked how long. She said it started emotionally not long after the promotion. The attention. The long hours. The private calls. The sense that Greg understood the pressure she was under in a way I never could. Then it turned physical a few weeks earlier. She said the hotel was not the first time. That part hit me hardest. Not because I needed the details. Because it meant she had been coming home to me after. Sleeping beside me after. Letting me question myself while she already knew the truth. I asked if all the distance had been because of him. She cried harder and said she did not know when things changed, only that once they did, being close to me started making her feel guilty. I laughed when she said that. Not because it was funny. Because it was obscene. She had turned my affection into pressure. My confusion into insecurity. My patience into something she could hide behind. And now she wanted guilt to sound like depth. I told her not to say another word unless it was practical. That was when panic finally showed up in her for real. She asked if I was leaving. Asked if we could talk tomorrow. Asked if I was really going to throw everything away over something she had already ended in her head a dozen times. That line stayed with me too. Already ended in her head. As if imaginary regret counted more than actual betrayal. I went upstairs, took a duffel bag out of the closet, and packed enough for a few days. Clothes. Toiletries. Laptop charger. The basics. She followed me at first, crying, trying to explain, then stopped in the doorway when she realized I was not slowing down. I left that night and checked into a hotel 15 minutes away. The next morning, I called a lawyer before I called anyone else. Later that afternoon, Greg's wife found out too. I never learned for sure who sent the photo, but I have my guess. Either way, whatever Rachel thought she was building with him did not survive daylight. People always think the affair is the part that destroys you. It wasn't, at least not for me. It was the months before. The way she made our bedroom feel dead and then acted like I was weak for noticing the smell. The way she accepted my patience while investing herself somewhere else. The way she let me wonder what was wrong with me when the truth was what was wrong with her. Rachel's promotion did change our marriage. Not because success ruined her. Because once she felt elevated, she decided loyalty belonged to a lower version of herself she no longer respected.